Starting in 2013, new Ram trucks came with an optional projector headlight. Here we have a customized housing from headlightworkshop.com and an original projector headlight. These new headlights used halogen bulbs in a low beam projector and a high beam reflector, and then halogen reflector fog lights. A lot of people think that they should have been made a little bit different to be brighter, maybe stock HIDs right off the line. But if you want to add an HID conversion kit to your low beam, your high beam, or your fog lights, it's kind of difficult on the new Ram trucks because of the CAN bus monitoring and control system that they use. It's much more complex than any other vehicle out there, and in this video we're going to go over step by step what comes in our Type B CAN bus integration kit for your fog lights, high beams, and low beams. Make sure to watch all 3 of our videos in our channel where we do step-by-step installs on a Ram truck so you can see how to do the install from the battery to the bulb. You essentially get 2 components in the Type B CAN bus HID conversion kit. You get a 35 watt or 55 watt HID conversion kit using Gen 4 Hilux ballasts from GTR Lighting, and you get the Morimoto Mopar spec CAN bus integration relay harness. First, we're going to open up the HID kit and show you what's included. There's a generic install guide that you're not really going to use. There's a couple HID bulbs and a couple HID ballasts. Now, the ballast you can do either 35 watt or 55 watt. The 55 watt Hilux ballast looks like this. It's a big brick with mounting tabs, and the mounting tabs are actually a part of the design for the electrical system. You want to try and ground that to a piece of metal. Use a screw or a nut and bolt and mount that to some metal on your chassis. And there's 2 of them, you only need 1. If you do the 35 watt HID kit, it's a much smaller ballast. It's a slim ballast, and it has the CAN bus integration module on the outside and the igniter on the outside. So there's a little bit more wiring, but it installs the same way. The only difference is you have a ground wire coming off the ballast. That has to be connected to your chassis somewhere also. For the HID bulbs, there are several options. For the early year low beam, it was a 9012 bulb. For the later year low beam, it was a 9005 bulb. All of the high beams from 2013 and up were all 9005. And the fog lights could either be 9005 or 9006. Luckily, we've got it all figured out, mapped out for you on our website. When you find the product that you're looking for, low beam, fog lights, or high beam, just make sure you select the correct options that fit your truck. The bulbs come in a box like this. There is alcohol wipes that you're supposed to clean the glass of the bulbs before you plug them in. There's an instruction sheet that says to clean your bulbs. And then the bulbs come packaged together like this. You take all this out. And here you're going to use everything. The way this connects is inside the headlight, you take out your halogen bulb and you plug in the HID. You plug in this connector where the original halogen bulb connected inside the headlight. It passes through the dust cover, creating a waterproof seal with this grommet. And then on the outside, these 2 connect to the ballast. The Morimoto Mopar spec CAN bus relay harness is pretty overwhelming. Let me explain. Inside the bag, you have a lot going on. The blue metal boxes are load equalizing resistors. This is what tricks the computer into thinking you still have the original halogen bulbs in place. Without these resistors, it thinks there's a problem and it'll shut down the headlight circuit, it'll flash, or give you a bulb out warning. We want to avoid all those things, which is why we need this big relay harness. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down and explain what everything is in this kit. First, we have a pair of relays that are connected to a bracket. You want to mount them with the bracket either screwed into some metal or zip tied to something strong. And you want them up like this. You want the wires coming out the bottom so that if any moisture hits it, it drains down and past the seal and doesn't get into the wiring. If you mount it upside down or sideways, there's a greater chance that moisture can get into the relays and cause corrosion. Coming off the relay, you've got all these different cables. There is a battery negative cable. There is a battery positive cable with a fuse holder. So the negative one goes to the negative terminal and positive goes to the positive terminal on your battery. You have a long and a short output that go to your ballast. This is what actually powers up the HID conversion kit instead of your stock wiring. So this one goes all the way to one side of the truck and this one stays on the short side. The last thing is the input. Now the way this works is, you can see we actually have two of the same connectors. This one you're going to plug into one side and it's a dummy plug. The only thing it does is gives load with these resistors to that one side of the headlight. The other input harness that looks like this one is the main input that controls the whole relay harness. Voltage from your original headlight or fog light wiring comes in here. It goes to the two resistors that trick the computer into thinking that the original light bulb is still in place. And then it passes down to this little box, which is actually a capacitor. See, the new Rams use something called PWM, or pulse width modulation, to control the brightness and longevity of your halogen light bulbs. If you let the PWM run without a capacitor, it'll make your headlights flicker. So we add the capacitor to make sure that the HIDs run solid and strong. Passes through the capacitor into this harness that goes to the relay to turn everything on. So you take the original halogen bulb out and this connects there. And then your new HID bulb goes into the socket. The HID wiring passes through the dust cover and the grommet, and two of them connect to the ballast, and the other two connect to the input of the relay harness. The relay harness comes pre-assembled, has one connection that goes to the capacitor, and one connection that goes to the two resistors. Mount the two resistors to metal. The capacitor can just get tied up anywhere. Another connection that then goes to the relay harness. The relay harness also has an output that goes to the ballast to power on the ballast. It has two cables that go to the battery, one for positive and one for negative. And it has a much longer output cable that we tied up here to go to the other side of the truck to power this ballast. From this ballast, the output goes to the HID bulb, and it installs the same as the other side. Plug this in to the wiring inside the headlight, replace the halogen bulb with the new HID, and then connect the resistors to the HID bulb like this. So on the inside of the headlight, this connects here, the bulb goes in here, and the pass-through for this harness connects to the resistors. Mount the resistors to metal, plug these two into the ballast. Now keep in mind, if anything's plugged in backwards, it might not work. So if you turn it on and the system doesn't fire up right away, flip the connection around and see if that's your problem.
So the first step in disassembling the front of your 2015 and up Ram with projector style headlights is you open the hood and you'll see that you've got this cover up front here, and there's these little push clips on it. And you can get one of these little push clip tools at any hardware store. They're like $7. They were great for this particular application. You can use just about anything. You know, if you're in a pinch, you could probably use a screwdriver, a flat screwdriver. I get under the cover itself to pry up on it. If you try prying up on just the clip, a lot of the times the sides will deform and you won't get it. You'll just make a mess of things and it ends up frustrating, but as you can see, it comes up pretty easy like this. So. We're going to set that off to the side. The next step is to remove these 4 10mm fasteners from the top of the grill. Now you just have to grab the grill down here. There's just these little push pins that hold it in on each side. Go ahead and give it a tug backwards. Some of them are pretty strong. Some of them fall right out. As you can see, here's the pin. And that's all you're trying to defeat when you're doing this, is just those little plastic retainers. Now we're onto the headlights. So they're pretty simple, especially if you're looking at them. Once again, we're dealing with 10mm fasteners. You can get at these with a ratchet. If you have an impact or a drill, you can get at it with that. There's one down here, there's one up here. So now, on the back side of the headlight in the fender, there's a little trap door. And it's held down with a little push pin that's plastic as well. Now, this is hard to show on camera, but on the back of the headlight, there's a plastic tab, and if you look in there with a flashlight, you can see it. And it's a little lever, and if you pull it down, the headlight will come out. A lot of the times it's going to fight you to get it out, and that's because of this. This is where that tab that I was talking about in the fender well connects. And so what you're doing is fighting this, and it's tricky. Sometimes you have to pull it left to right, up and down. It will come out. You have to fight with it a little bit. If it's your first time taking it apart, honestly, I'd recommend putting a little tape down here, just in case. Last thing you want to do is scratch your nice truck. So we've got one connector here that we have to deal with, and the easiest way to get it off is to take a flat screwdriver, put it down here, lift up on it, out it goes. Now we can take our headlight and set it on the bench. Now we're going to install the relay harness, and the best place to put the relay pack itself is right here on the side of the fuse box. Got some tough plastic you can send a screw into, you won't hit anything. It's pretty secure, it's pretty safe. So what we're going to do first is, well, what I like to do first is lay out my connections, where things are headed, get a general idea, and see if I'm going to run into any issues for this install. So this long ballast connection here, it's labeled ballast, heads over to the passenger side. So I'm just going to lay that over there for now. This one goes to the positive terminal on the battery, and it's labeled battery plus, battery positive. We've got our OEM input. We've got our driver's side ballast, and then we've got our ground. Now on these Rams, it's really easy to make these connections for the power and ground. Over here on the driver's side fender, there is a chassis ground. It's a 10mm fastener. So this is our battery negative connection coming from the relay harness, and we're going to take our factory stud here, factory bolt, and just reassemble that to this fender ground connection. And that's a 10mm fastener. And I'm using power tools just for the sake of the video. You can do this stuff with basic stuff that you have at home, you know, basic socket set. You don't really need anything special for this part of the install. We're going to take our battery positive connection, and I'm just going to put it on this stud here. And that's also a 10mm. You're going to find that 10mm fasteners are kind of the norm with this install. Put your cap back on. positive cover back on too. So we're going to take our OEM input and our driver's side ballast wires. We're going to pass them through this little hole here. Gets us right where we need to be. Alright, I'm going to take this time to secure this relay pack to the fuse box here like I was talking about earlier. That way when I'm running the wiring and everything, I don't have a bunch of stuff flopping around up here. To do this, you could use a screwdriver, you can use whatever you really have. We're using some self-drilling screws from a local hardware store today. Now there is some wiring back there, so be careful. I mean, nothing's really close, but it's just a good idea depending on what hardware you're using to keep an eye on it. Now we're going to install our resistors. And so you take the male connector coming from your resistor pack, connect that to your OEM input. This end of the resistor pack is going to go to the plug that comes out of the headlight. We'll get there in a second. For now, we're just getting everything set up and ready to accept this headlight. So the easiest way to mount these resistors over here is to take these tabs, and you can take a pair of pliers or just your thumb, and bend one of the tabs down like this at a right angle. And if you do that, they'll fit down here in this cavity between the bumper and the core support of the vehicle, giving you a little bit of space for future modifications, stuff like that. It's really a safe place to put them. So now that those resistors are down there, we're pretty much set. We'll zip tie up this wiring later, once we get our ballast mounted securely somewhere, and we'll go from there. So the final step before installing the headlight itself is to install the HID ballast. There's a lot of different options for where you can put this thing in here. You can use your discretion. Personally, I like to just put a zip tie through it. The mounting tabs on each side of the ballast are designed to be grounded to prevent radio noise. So if you do this install this way and get radio noise when you turn on your headlights, switch it up and mount the ballast with screws through the mounting tabs to the frame of the truck instead of using zip ties like I did. The reason I like to use a zip tie is because I can pivot the ballast after the fact. It makes making the connections to it a little bit easier. Gives me a little bit of leeway in case I need to reroute wires. You know, with an install like this, you never know if you're going to have to come back and change something. It's a little bit easier to work with a zip tie, in my opinion. So now that this is connected to the relay harness with the ballast sticker right there, you can just kind of scoot it back there. And it doesn't get much easier than that. So now what we're going to do is get the headlight all situated and ready to go for reinstallation. And to do that, we need to take this rear cover off, and it's held in place by a couple 8mm or 5/16 bolts. Either or will work. We're going to unplug our low beam, turn it to the left, unlock it. So we've got our GTR lighting bulb out here. You're going to see that there's a rubber grommet on it. There's a few connectors on this end, and the bulb and connector for this inside connector on the headlight is right here. What we need to do in order to make this work is drill out our dust cover so that we can install that grommet here. We want to keep dust and water and other debris out of this headlight. So in order to do that, what you're going to need to do is drill a hole in it with a step bit and try to get it approximately centered on the low beam side. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's a little bit of room back there. There's our hole. Now the only tricky part here is you have to de-pin this connector to make it fit.
The reason you have to de-pin this connector is that these little connectors fit through the hole in the dust cover just fine. It's this guy. It has these shoulders on the sides that don't allow it to pass through. And even when you take that off, you still have the clips that hold this thing in place that don't let it go through. So just pop off this retainer collar and then use a pry tool. You can either use a a de-pinning tool like this, or a really sharp small pick, or a jeweler's flat screwdriver. And on the top of the connector, on the inside of each pin, there's little recesses where the pick tool will fit down in. And you want to push it in there and then twist the tool outward to release the retaining clip that holds the metal pin in place. You see right on the back side there's a flexible bar of metal, and that's what we're trying to bend from the top of the connector like this. Push it in, twist the tip to the outside of the connector, and then use your other fingers to pull the wire out. Now if you don't put the wires back in the connector exactly how they came out, nothing's going to work. So take pictures, label them, and make sure that the black and red wires go back into the connector exactly how they came out.
So now the grommet is installed. It's a tight fit. That's what you want. This step bit size is 7/8. So make sure you get one that goes up to 7/8. Honestly, you could probably do 1 inch. There's probably enough room there. 7/8 is a really tight fit. That's what you want though. The tighter fit, the better. It's going to give you the most water protection, dust and debris protection. Certainly better than 1 inch. So now we're going to take the cover off the bulb here. Take this little piece of styrofoam off the base. Grab one of our rubbing alcohol packets out of this box. You want to clean these bulbs before you install them. Even the littlest bit of oil can cause them to prematurely fail. Just give them a little wipe down. Set the bulb in there, turn it clockwise. There we go. Make sure you make this connection. If you leave this unplugged, your system's not going to work, and you don't want to take all this back apart. Match the red wire with the blue wire on this connector. Make sure it snaps. I usually pull this wiring while I bring the cover up to it just to get a little more slack, because slack is useful.
So after you push all your wiring through the hole in the dust cover, reinsert the wires into the connector. Now if they don't snap in place and grab, you might have to use your pick tool and bend that retaining clip a little bit. When you push it back in, you want to tug on them and feel positive engagement. You might have to do this for both of them, and once everything's clipped in place, put your plastic retainer back on the bottom of the bulb. It hugs the two wires and then pushes up and over the two shoulders on the connector and clips in place. Do this last part after you've already run this dissected connector through your dust cover. When it's all done, you should be able to look at the top and see that your two metal pins are flat and flush with the top of the plastic connector.
Now we're going to put our retainer back on the back side. There we go. All right, dust cover time. All right, now we're ready to head back to the vehicle and install this headlight. So, don't forget your main plug. It's very important. Plug that in the bottom. We've got our HID bulb connections here and our HID ballast connector here. And this connector, the one that we depinned and repinned, go ahead and plug it into the female connector on the resistor harness. We've got our ballast outputs here for our bulb inputs. Make those connections. They only go one way, so you can't really mess it up. I'm going to tuck our wiring back. And that's it. Okay, so on the passenger side, it's very, very similar to the driver's side. I already have the headlight removed. First thing I'm going to do is install these resistors. I'm sure you remember that. So we're going to just bend the tabs once again. Take our little self-drilling screw here. There's the first one. Now you kind of want to keep the placement of these future-proof. If you think you're going to do HID high beams in the future, you're going to need more of these resistors, so you don't want to just put them front and center and take up all of your space. So in this case, I'm trying to stack these as far as I can to the right so that I have space in the future just in case. Now we're going to take our ballast power coming from the driver's side, and with some zip ties we're going to route that over to this passenger side. It's this harness here, the one that I just kind of draped over this side while we were still figuring out where everything was going to go over here. And so what you can do for that is fish it through here underneath the radiator mount. And just run it across the vehicle. There's plenty of stuff to secure it with. These AC lines or transmission cooler lines, whatever you find. When it comes to securing this harness, there's a factory wire harness underneath this core support. And it's absolutely perfect. It's heading the same direction we are, so we're just going to tag along with it. Now pull as much slack as you can when you're routing this, because you're going to want every bit of it. It'll give you more options for mounting your ballast. There aren't really any moving parts up front here, so you don't need to go crazy with zip ties, but just enough so it's not drooping on anything. Some rams on the front, like this one, as you can see, it has the active air dam. You'll probably find that on a lot of these trucks. Just make sure you don't attach to the fins on that. It'll throw a check engine light and not function properly. You can fish the ballast connector right through this plastic core support here. As you can see, we got plenty of room. We can put that ballast anywhere. I'm probably going to put it back here, nice and out of the way. Biggest thing you want to watch out for is getting in the way of your headlight. You don't want to interfere with your headlight at all. It'll just make you have to redo things, and that's not any fun. So the next step is to modify our other headlight and install it on this side. So here's what I did with the ballast. I zip tied it to this factory harness running across this lower area where the resistors are. Zip tied it to that and just kind of tucked it between the wheel liner and the core support. It's in there really snug, it's not going to go anywhere, and it's space efficient for us, so that's nice. Because on this side it's just designed a little bit differently. We don't quite have the same amount of real estate over here as we did on the driver's side. So now the next step is to connect our headlight, reinstall that. And on this side, this connection coming out of the headlight itself is just going down to our resistors. So let that snap into place. Ballast connections. Our main headlight harness here, which just goes down on the bottom. And just like the driver's side, we just tuck it all back in there. Now, once again, it's a great time to test, make sure everything works.
Well, there you have it. Nothing to it, right? No, I'm just kidding. It's a big, involved install, but we're here to help. We're here Monday through Friday for phone calls and emails, or if you have a question, you can drop it in the comments section below the video. You can also talk with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Google+. And please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our other lighting videos. Remember, we've got a full install video for low beam, fog lights, and high beam for the projector headlights on your Ram, so check out our other videos. Thanks for watching.